This is a very entertaining movie. This is the kind of movie you can definitely watch with friends. It's a movie you can definitely watch with your partner. Like Duncan says, you can definitely crack a beer and put this movie on.
And now we begin part 3 of our Denis Villeneuve arc here on Foreplay. Wrapped up last week with Prisoners. Now we are jumping forward in time to 2015, where we will be discussing the drug war Mexican-American border film Sicario. And next week we'll be on Dune for what is undoubtedly going to be some sort of giga episode on Dune 1 and 2, with plenty of references to the books, other versions of Dune, most likely. So you guys can look forward to that. But first up, we are going in a very different direction. Prisoners was a thriller. This is a thriller, but dealing with border politics for a Canadian director is a very interesting way to branch out.
You could say, Monty, we've gone from prisoners to no prisoners in this movie. It is a brutal evisceration of American policy as it pertains to Mexico and the asymmetric nature of the war on drugs. And like you say, for a Canadian director to sort of handle that material as deftly as it's handled here, and funnily enough, this is one of his most well-received films. If we're talking about public opinion, it's one of the highest rated on all the aggregators and like Metacritic and things.
It's got a very
like
mainstream
that.
cast too, to be fair.
Yeah, and absolutely, it's got a very mainstream cast, an excellent cast, which no doubt we'll talk about. But I mean, it's actually really intelligent in the sense that I haven't seen a movie try to tackle what a multifaceted problem the idea of stopping the drug cartels from Mexico actually is, probably since Traffic.
I was going to reference
So
that.
Steve
It's the obvious
Soderbergh.
contrast point, right?
Yeah. Which actually, I think, I watched Traffic a couple of years ago.
Has it held up?
In some areas.
I watched it a couple of years ago too, and it was significantly worse than I remembered it. Like, especially it is like soap opera-y with the senator's daughter. Like, that arc, that side arc with the senator's daughter is really bad.
Thing is, I can see why you reference it, though, Richard, because obviously the sort of epiphany at the end of Traffic's supposed to be that it's happening at all levels of society, and essentially, like, even things that just take place in America in high society are linked to the drug trade and all the evils of the world. So, like, that's like a clever premise, but the difference is, though, that was still very much a Hollywood product, wasn't it, as a movie? Like, it was still, like, you still sort of understood a lot of that. Whereas this one, to me, the premise of it almost is, if you understand the inference and what the actual story was about, you're supposed to never be able to look at the world again the same way, especially not America, especially not their relationship with Mexico, especially not the notion of, are they in good faith trying to stop the drug trade like that? It's kind of trying to be like an ideological bomb for that like idea that we've all got from movies.
Yeah. And obviously, I mean, look, I will say Traffic might be, because Traffic came out, I think it was before 9/11, right? Yeah, right. So, it was one of the first mainstream Hollywood movies that really was taking a look at the war on drugs, again, specifically with Mexico, and how it affects Mexico and Mexican relations. It was one of the first movies that tried to approach exploring that in an intelligent way. I mean, like, prior to that,
and also another huge big budget movie with a massive cast that everyone's going to watch.
Yeah.
So.
Like, prior to that, the average kind of drug movie is like fucking Scarface or something, like, or we're watching Miami Vice on TV or something like that. They just weren't very serious explorations of a complicated problem. And so, and I think now, I think the general sentiment is, obviously, it's kind of timely because of all the problems we've got with fentanyl in America right now. I think it is actually, like, the general sentiment is the war on drugs didn't work. The war on drugs has been an unprecedented disaster. It has empowered these criminal gangs that are essentially paramilitary organizations in Mexico. I mean, they are, if you ever read up on groups like Los Zetas, they are fucking insane. I mean, Los Zetas
They're basically more powerful than the police, right?
yeah, well, Los Zetas was a cartel that was a branch of the Mexican military that got so jaded by like going to war with the cartel. They made their own cartel. They stole a bunch of like military equipment and just said, well, now we're the best armed. We're the best armed and the best trained. So we'll just be the best cartel. So, I mean, there's, there's so many stories like that just in the history of the Mexican cartels. And, we all know that they fucking play for keeps. They are a terrifying criminal organization. I mean, you'll have seen stories in the news recently. YouTubers that make jokes about being in the cartel or mocking the cartel turn up dead. They are a scary, scary criminal fraternity.
Let's hope Smoothie doesn't ever play for a Mexican team, I guess.
So yeah, I mean, for real, because it's like,
keep
listen,
him safe, keep Owen safe.
And look, I'll just throw this in there, and then we can we'll get into the summary of the film. But I'll also just add, I like these very sober, somber takes on the complexities of this issue, on exactly what the drug cartels are doing, and actually how the drug cartels are empowered by corrupt law enforcement in a lot of ways, and how American policy towards Mexico and indeed the war on drugs has ultimately failed. And it would be a criticism of mine that, like, when you see Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul or something like that, and they talk about the cartels, and they make it this really cartoony slapstick thing. I don't really, I think they're great pieces of media in their own right, but I don't think it's actually reflective of like just how layered and multifaceted the drug problem as it pertains to Mexico and America actually is. And I think Sicario, out of all the recent media I've seen that kind of addresses it, it's easily the smartest, the most realistic feeling, and gives you the ultimate black pill with the ending. So.
Yep.
By the way, one thing I would say is, in the same ways, I do find it incredibly boring to be lectured about, like, environmental issues or, like, child slave labor by someone who's doing it with an iPhone. I just find that on its face absurd. Essentially, that's like saying, I've looked into this one area, so now you have to. And it's like, what about that? Well, I haven't looked into that yet. So the same thing, right? If you can watch this film, I will say this. I'm not one of the people who judges people that way. I think everyone should make their own personal decision. I do think you should consider the consequences of your actions. But in the same way as people are hypocrites like that, how are you ever going to speak out against any related topic, watch this film, and then do cocaine, for example? I mean, I say that, by the way, as someone who has, since watching this movie, done cocaine, probably will again, if I'm going to be honest. But tell you what, though, if you're going to be one of those people who lectures, if you watch a film like this, the point is, where do you think it comes from? How do you think it gets in the country?
How does the sausage get made?
It isn't all just up someone's arse, is it? Like, one of the stupidest things about this topic, by the way, is this is one of those areas where the black pill isn't even just about the drugs. It's actually about what is the role of law enforcement. Like, they're not there to enforce laws. They're actually there as sort of the security arm of whatever the state is, and all the rich people and the criminals, which, by the way, criminal usually is just the bottom layer of the hierarchy. It's just that's the area where you have to be the fall guy, or you do the stuff where you don't get away with it and you don't get your prison sentence communicate, or whatever the fuck that's called. So basically, my problem with this whole topic is, I do think people have a massive amount of hypocrisy when they look at these issues. Like, there's a famous stat that no one likes to hear, which is that in most major cities, supposedly the majority of like petty criminals have been arrested like 3 or 4 times. The police basically know all their names, where they live, and they can, like, it's something like 1% does, like, 60% of the violent crime. And if these people really wanted to, you can round them all up tomorrow. You can put them on, think about a million different bullshit cases you could throw on them. You can find all sorts of small things. You can find something there. But the point is, on some level, as is the kind of black pill of this movie, it's not only allowed, potentially it's integrated within their own operations of what they want to do, and they use these people as like lackeys or bait for other things. And then, so the other thing that people don't know in the modern days, they think it's just political rabble rousing when people talk about this idea, which, by the way, Traffic, like you said, came out in 2000, guys. That was 20 plus years ago. The notion already back then was like, if you think this just happens over a line in the sand where people speak Spanish, you're a moron. Like, it's always been in the bottom part of the US. People who are in Texas or California, this is reality. It's why there's a million shows about this. But the difference is, though, they don't do this. They'll give you like a glimpse into that world, but then they'll use the Hollywood trope facade to go, but the good guys got them all in the end, and they caught the bad guy. And you know what? See, that evil guy who did all the mob boss guy, he got shot in the head, so don't worry, he's dead. And then as long as you don't think beyond that, you just go, be a shame if that really existed and was going on right now. So I do think this movie, it's impossible to talk about just as fiction. It's clearly actually like trying to be a mirror on society, isn't it?
Well, it's also, completely. I think, especially a lot of people who, well, probably are American, but especially people who aren't American, don't really understand the history of the Mexican-American border, which has been quite fluid over several hundred years, right? When we think about the border now, I mean, the border with Arizona changed via government like land purchasing. Obviously, California and like large swaths of New Mexico and Arizona were Spanish colonies that then were Mexican that America fought wars over in order to annex, essentially. So this has been an ongoing issue, and many of the people who were culturally Mexican hundreds of years ago suddenly became American when parts of California or other parts of the Southwest became American, right? So there are long-standing ties between the countries. Clearly, that entire part of the world started via Spanish colonization in the first place. And then, intermingling basically with native populations to create the current like Latin American population. It was very interesting. I was actually in Mexico City for the 400th anniversary of Cortez's conquest of Tenochtitlan, which was Mexico City. And people there, nobody was really upset by the Spanish conquest of the natives because everybody is like equally native and Spanish blood. So their current culture would not exist without that conquest. So it was more a time of reflection. But the people there that I spoke to really didn't feel that it was a colonization issue because their entire modern Mexican culture was a hybrid of native Aztec culture and, invading Spanish culture effectively. But because it's 400 years on now, there's not really a way to separate it in their minds, and they wouldn't live in the current, social milieu without it. So nobody was really upset by it. It was more just thinking about their own history, which I found to be interesting.
I mean, the joke is, unless something's an active war now, nobody's upset about anything in history. There are people who are professional agitators in media who are there to either tell you, look at this old thing that happened that was horrible, be upset now, or like, why isn't everyone upset? Because like, as you say, Monty, how could the same people be super Christian and go, it's terrible that the invasion, well, then you wouldn't have your religion and your whole heritage, would you? It's why, by the way, I get so bored of any discussion of history that starts at a specific date, because they pick the fucking date to skew who the bad guys are. Like, if anyone wants to go, and America was so evil, look at the wars they fought and the treaties they broke with Mexico. If you don't like colonization, how could you like Mexico? Think it through, fuckhead. That already, the point is you just picked the date and went, that's Mexico. And then, but magically, it never becomes the USA. I noticed even though we have hundreds of years between that one, but it just shows how the framing is everything in these things, which actually like is what basically the whole point of this movie. By the way, I'll tell you another obvious like sort of almost a mirror effect I was getting from other media was, since the beginning of this film is all about the idea that you're taking people who are more like law enforcement with a little bit of like bleed over into this drug shit, and then they're getting brought into this like war on drugs, as it were. By the way, if people don't know, the reason why there will never be a reduction in any kind of a war is every war has a war machine, and guess what? The war machine doesn't want to stop. Everyone's out of the fucking job and all the gravy train stops. So the joke is, anything that you declare war on, especially the United States, will only increase in budget, and you'll magically find more and more and more terrorists and more people doing drugs, and you won't believe it. A war and everything they have a war and just goes more and more and more because it's another way for the military-industrial complex to get involved. But in this particular case, the obvious parallel I thought in cinema, since obviously there's not too many movies, like I say, actually have the balls to do this with the drug aspect. Usually they back out of it with some hero killing the bad guy. The obvious thing is actually war movies. It's stuff like Platoon, where what you're seeing is you're seeing the little rookie with the naive ideas going there, thinking they're fighting for a certain cause and they're going to accomplish a certain thing. And what you quickly learn is there's two types of grizzled veteran. There's the one that's the cynic that's like, listen, kid, this is just how it is. It's fucked, isn't it? And then there's the one that's the fucking psycho. And that's the exact kind of person, by the way, you want in war. They're the person who's like, I'm down for this shit. Yes. And it's like fucking Tom Sizemore and Heat. They're here. The action is the fucking juice to them, guys. And you get exactly those two people in this film.
Or Apocalypse Now, too, right? Apocalypse Now, I think, is another obvious parallel.
So that in the same way as you have the guy who's loving it, like, I love the smell of napalm, though. That's fucking the Josh Brolin character here. Like, the whole movie has a fucking smile on his face because he's not just riding the wave and going with the he's fucking loving this shit. And in fact, the message I get from his character, brilliant message, by the way. I hope one message people take from this film is, if you're like Emily Blunt, get the fuck out of the kitchen. You literally can't handle the heat or the concept of a kitchen. Like, it ain't for you. Like, if you're on some Boy Scout shit, like, what fucking, literally, you should just be on like a mounted police guard in Canada, just like helping old ladies cross the road or something. It ain't for you. This shit is like, if you get into this, you are murdering people, you are killing people, you are covering stuff up. That's even half the fucking gig of what they're doing. They can't do it all above board. They'd never catch the fuckers. In fact, by the way, logically, that would never work and exist anyway, guys. If you had to follow all the rules and your enemy doesn't, how are you ever going to beat him? He doesn't have to fucking do paperwork, does he, to catch you? He doesn't have to like have a legit reason to bust in your heart. They just do that, so you'd lose all the time. So already it's a naive worldview. But I actually think that's the heart of this film, is if you watch this film, this is actually why, for me, I feel like I'll never know what it's like to watch this if someone's 17 or 18. I'd love to know if this is a movie before you've kind of got a bit of media like background in. You haven't watched a lot of these movies we're talking about. I'd love to know how an 18-year-old would watch this movie, because I feel like surely you're just going to identify with Emily Blunt and you're going to hope she makes it and that she uncovers it and at the end she stops all the bad stuff. But I have to say, the whole film, even though I'd never been spoiled, I knew everywhere this film was going, but I was there for the ride. Like, by the way, I'll give you a quick example. As soon as they start at the beginning introducing that guy who's some sort of Mexican cop and it's just his day-to-day, I knew exactly where that story's going. I knew exactly. There's a great example I'll give you. If you've ever read Grant Morrison's The Invisibles comic, which is a really sprawling comic he did in the 90s, he did an issue just like this, where what he does is he does an issue about a guy and you just get to see his whole life. You know, he grows up in some town in England, he joins like the military or whatever and does like a tour in like, I don't know, Falklands or something. I can't remember what it was in this particular comic. He comes back, you know, it's hard to get work back at home. He hasn't really got a skill set. He's a bit fucked up because of the war. So he gets some job in some sort of like, you know, security force. And then what they do is they build this whole issue up. And at the end, what happens is earlier in the comic in The Invisibles, it turns out he was just a random security guy that like one of the main characters just shot like on the way into a building, like, and then just put him down. And so it was to kind of show you that like there's a consequence to everyone in that world. Like that wasn't just like a video game with like a fucking henchman. Like that was a real guy who had a whole life. So I could already see when this character was introduced, one, where that was going. And as a result, by the way, I wasn't at all like, he shot him. I can't believe he shot him. That was always the fact. Even the whole thing's like, playing football with me,
Daddy. Do you want to play football with me?
I knew where that was going the whole way. So all I'm going to say is this: if you didn't look on one level, you're like Emily Blunt, just get out of this dirty business. Go watch movies that are about joy and like watch Cinema Paradiso or something you can. Because here's the thing: if you're not cynical enough and jaded like me and Richard to know, I know where this is going. Like,
here's the thing though: I feel like if people have been watching along and they made it through Prisoners, they can make it through this movie. We're just on the black pill arc, basically. Yeah. We did get the bit of optimism with Arrival, but even then, kind of there are dark conclusions to the ability to exist in, you know, to see time, right? All of time.
Probably something we didn't really kind of just talk about just as a general thing is how dark all of his films actually are.
Yep.
Like, I mean, for real, there's not a lot of fucking optimism. I mean, even Dune, the end of Blade Runner.
Well, ironically, Blade Runner might be his most cheery film with like a heart to it,
And that still kind of sucks.
It is. It's sort of it's dark and it's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
So, but anyway, Monty, this is where you come in with your succinct summary of
okay. So
an incredibly complex, layered.
I'm going to do this real
political
quick.
movie. Yeah.
So basically, there are some FBI agents. Mostly, we get to deal with Emily Blunt's character, Kate Macer, who is trying to basically find kidnapped victims at the start, ends up raiding a drug house that is full of bodies. There's an explosion. It's rigged. Then she gets roped into a joint task force with the Delta Force. So now all of a sudden you think, oh, she's an FBI agent. You know, she must be pretty legit. And you find out that there are just like shadow arms of the government way above her that she cannot possibly understand, including the CIA, who's Josh Brolin's character is a shadow CIA agent. Basically, they're just chilling with Delta Force. If you don't know what Delta Force is, it is like the elite strike teams. It's like Navy SEAL 6. But I think they're run by the Army. But they do like basically black ops missions. They are real.
Yeah.
They're very real, terrifyingly real. And also a kind of mysterious, a mysterious man played by Benicio del Toro. And these people are very cagey about their identities, clearly, because they're doing extra legal things. So Alejandro is Benicio del Toro's character. Basically, this joint task force then goes after the head of the snake. So they're not interested in this little stash house that existed or the dozens of bodies that were hidden inside the walls. They're interested in kind of roping her in to fuck with the Mexican border. They go and try and take out like this drug lord's brother. So they actually just go in there with the help of the federal police from Mexico and extradite him and try and get him back into America to put in prison. They then use his brother as bait, who has to go back to the king drug lord. And Benicio del Toro then follows them through a tunnel underneath the Mexican-American border because he's kind of just a pit bull that has been unleashed by the U.S. government for plausible deniability onto the other side. He ends up infiltrating the head drug lord's compound, killing the drug lord and his family in a very brutal fashion. And then you kind of end the film with them back in the States trying to figure out, the effect of their actions. The end scene of the film is Alejandro, Benicio del Toro's character, coming back and trying to get Emily Blunt's character to sign a document saying, hey, everything was above board here, which he coerces her into signing. And then
by pointing a gun at her fucking face.
Yep. And then that's the end. There's the black pill for you. So there is a sequel to this film. I have not seen it.
It is.
It's not by the same people.
I mean, listen.
It's by the same writer.
It's got Benicio del Toro and Josh Brolin. I watched it. It is not a good film.
Too bad.
Which probably doesn't surprise you. It's got a couple of good action set pieces from an action perspective, but all the subtlety and the messages of it has really gone, because basically Josh Brolin and Benicio del Toro, they are down in Mexico basically agitating, trying to get the cartels to go to war with each other by framing various people. Okay. So the fact that this spawned a franchise blows my mind.
There's another one coming out too, apparently.
Yeah, called Capos, right? Sicario Capos. It's like, guys, please stop trying to make this a franchise.
By the way, it doesn't need more than this film. The end of this film, no. You need to say. Yeah. I even think another parallel I could draw is obviously the David Ayer movies like Training Day, Harsh Times. Yeah. If you've never seen Harsh Times, but if you like Training Day, just watch that one. It's got Christian Bale. It's a banger. Yeah. So also films that are trying to be sort of like about the harsh reality of what it's actually like on the street instead of what you imagine in a film or in like a hero arc.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously there's other little bits and pieces to it. So I don't know really where we want to jump in. I guess let's start by talking about the opening scene.
The opening scene is fucking amazing.
Yeah, I love the fact this movie just grabs you by the nuts and starts squeezing from minute one. Like, it doesn't give a fuck. Like, it is for what is ultimately an intelligent movie about the layered and all the political issues about the asymmetric war on drugs. As Duncan said, if one group has to follow all of the rules and the other can break all of the rules, how can the group that has to follow self-imposed rules ever win? And so what it does is it sets up this unbelievably tense scene. They're invading the stash house. Emily Blunt's character, Kate, nearly gets fucking murked in like the first 2 minutes of the movie. She narrowly avoids a shotgun blast to the fucking face. The shotgun blast goes through the wall to reveal something that they can't tell what it is. They start tearing the wall out, and they just find a bunch of executed bodies, bags over their head, visible signs of torture that have just been strung up and put in the walls of this house. What's insane, by the way, about this? I wanted to see if that was based on a real incident, because
it must have happened loads of times, I imagine.
I don't know if people might watch this opening scene and feel it's all a bit far-fetched. But anyway,
okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, it's like you say, I don't have a frame of reference of what it must be like to be like 18 and watch this. Like whether or not you would watch this and go, well, that's
or non-American or not keyed into like American, political issues.
No, but it depends. Here's the thing: what I'm trying to think, what country you could come from, though. Like if you know anything about how the Russian mob work, or like, you go around the world and there's the Yakuza. Like if anything, like that's actually, by the way, where the black pill begins. Is think about the beginning of this scene, Richard. The implication of like the walls of, and they even say we haven't even checked the crawl space. There might be more bodies. These horrifically tortured bodies, and then it's not only explicitly said later by like the fucking Josh Brolin character, but the implication is, we don't even give a shit about that. That's no biggie. We'll see that with someone else. Because there's loads of houses like that. Like, wait, this isn't like a serial killer or something. No, this is just what these people do. Because as Richard alluded to earlier as well, the other thing that people don't understand is these people aren't just on the shit of like, I just want to get the money and the drugs. It's like an essential part baked into this type of crime is that whole thing of like better to be feared than loved. And you don't just like hurt people. You do it in such an emphatic way that, as you see later in this film, everyone knows that when you fuck with them or they get revenge, your whole family's going, and your family's probably going in some torturous way and some horrific way. And by the way, that's the ultimate line that they always have over you. You might think from a traditional Hollywood movie, what they have over you is, are you a sellout who'll take the money, or would you do something if a gun was against your head? No. How about if you don't do it? By the way, it's already taken for granted you will do it, otherwise you're dead. But not only that, it's even implied they go to this level where even if I'm going to kill you, do you want me to also torture your family, or should I just kill you? Like that's the level of like thinking these people are on with their negotiating with you. So the implication from their absolute outset is like, mate, if that's like small potatoes to them and no big deal, people horrifically killed en masse in a fucking stash house that you'd never find normally, where's this film going? And that's actually, to me, I actually hope people understand the inference at the end that like it goes to the very top. Like that's why actually it's totally logical they had basically coerced this woman into having to sign the thing. Like she could never that's why the silliest angle of this film, this is why I say it's clever that they make you identify with Emily Blunt. It's because she even starts out saying loads of that shit to like tell him the truth. What should I tell him? Tell him the truth. I just want the truth. And it's like, if there's anyone needs Jack Nicholson to pop up like, you can't handle the truth. It's her, because she can't handle the truth. And the truth was never what this was about, you fucking idiot. You were on some like I say, some Girl Scout shit there where you thought you were like doing your right thing and going to get a badge. Like there's no badge, and you're actually getting in the way of what the fuck's going on here, which is essentially a paramilitary war over drugs and territory.
Yeah, I mean, so when I looked into it, right, in 2019, there was like there were two houses in Jalisco which were exactly like this. In fact, one of them had, I think it was 35 bodies exhumed in the movie. There were 34 bodies in a single house like this.
This was after the movie, by the way.
But this was 2019.
This is 2015, right? The movie was released.
Yeah, and so, but also between 2009 and 2014, according to this report I read, it said that state authorities in Mexico uncovered 53 clandestine graves that contained 152 bodies across all of them. And so these types of like, you get a stash house and you use it to store drugs, but hey, got a body that you want to fucking stash, you just put it in the wall. So you just dig a grave, stick it in the foundations, whatever. This is quite a normal practice, and they are uncovering these things all the time. And I was like, wow. And what you will quickly realize if you start looking into each of the set pieces in this movie and some of the references in this movie. They even took the name of a real cartel that is now defunct. It was defunct as of 2007, I guess for safety reasons, because as we've established, if you talk about any of the current cartels in a derogatory manner, they come and they fucking execute you.
Sure.
So the level of research that went into this is actually insane. And so if you're watching the opening scene with the bodies and the bomb, and you're going, "This is really far-fetched." No, you just have the blinkers on. Mercifully, you don't know how far these cartels are willing to go.
Well,
But the
it's
key
also
point to the story,
like very based off of El Chapo, who was the drug lord
sure.
in Mexico, who was very active during this time. He's now in prison, but
Yes.
it took a long time to get there.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, and the key part to the story as well, and this is why they decide that they want to go after and basically do this Black Ops assassination, as it turns out to be, is because it happened in Arizona. And so this is another aspect. What they explicitly say in the text of the film is, if this had happened in a border town, it would probably be all right. If this had happened on the Mexican side of the border, no one would bat an eyelid. But because it's happened in Arizona, and therefore it is creeping further and further into the American mainstream, this is a no-no. This is completely forbidden. This is the unspoken agreements between the law enforcement of America and the cartels of Mexico is being breached in some way. They are getting too bold. So now we have to push back. And the way that they decide to push back initially, because within the first 30 minutes, you've got two of the best action set pieces you're ever going to see, super tense. They decide that they're going to go and essentially, I mean, they say extradite. Right? They say extradite. They're going to extradite. Appropriately, it would be rendition. They're going to rendition the brother of the cartel leader, who they know is going to be in a set part of Mexico, and they're going to take him and bring him back over the border for interrogation. And that leads to a shootout, which again is another fantastic set piece.
Pregunta, paisanos. ¿Quieren morir?
What the fuck are we doing?
By the way, even that part also. Yeah, go on then.
I just want to put it aside real quick about the history of this. If you guys are interested, this was during a time period where there was a lot of really weird stuff going on around the kind of drug cartels. Possibly the weirdest of which was Sean Penn was actually interviewing El Chapo for Rolling Stone magazine. Yeah. Because basically El Chapo, this drug lord, had fantasies of being the star of like a Hollywood biopic. And so he allowed Sean Penn to come visit him. Remember, nobody could find him for a long time. And Sean Penn went down there to interview him for Rolling Stone magazine, which is extremely surreal if you read the actual article that came out about this. But there was a lot of funky stuff going on around the drug cartels and the drug cartel leadership at this time.
Yeah, for sure.
This is also why, though, I actually do wonder again. I almost wish we could just bring in like some naive fucking 18-year-old who works with us, who can just ask them to, like, they could be like the A/B control group to see what it's like if you haven't watched loads of movies. Because I even thought some of the stuff, which does need, sadly, in Hollywood films to be explicitly said as part of the fucking exposition, to me, we're just like, well, that's obvious, isn't it? Like, again, when they do that shootout in the traffic, right, and they kill all those people. And if you notice, essentially, everyone gets killed because two people move. Like, so even if those people were going to shoot, you kill them all. You just kill them all to take care of it, right? And then when they go, they like explicitly say, like, this is going to be on every fucking paper in America. And then that guy goes, this won't even be make El Paso news. And you're like, well, yeah, no shit. But I keep forgetting. No, whoa, wait. I'm in a Hollywood film here. Like, actually, that does need to be said, sadly. Like, there are plebs watching this sort of thing. Oh my God, I can't believe this. And it's like, again, what they're trying to show you here is The drug house with all those bodies in, that's nothing, mate. That's actually just like, whatever, skip past that. They're killing these people. And they're like, yeah, whatever, just was going to happen, wasn't it? Like, that's why the most amazing part is actually that the Emily Blunt character can get to the end of the film and still be delusional. Bro, even after she signs the fucking document, she pulls out a gun, like, what are you doing at this point in time? Like, everything's over. Like, your whole dream is gone. It's dead. In fact, even worse, it never existed. But you still think you're sort of like the sheriff and you're going to get the bad guy. Like, by the way, what bad guy? That would be my question to the Emily Blunt. Who is the bad guy? Like, I don't even know what the premise is. At this point, it's just like demons fighting demons. Like, I actually think, by the way, the real heart of this film, assuming you don't just watch it to get shocked like Emily Blunt, the real heart of this film surely is the fucking Benicio del Toro character.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that character, by the way, I can entirely relate to, because it's one of the reasons why in life, I actually, literally in journalism, choose certain areas that, like, aren't just like, I always used to make that joke, Richard, on By the Numbers, like, I mean, it's before the Saudis and China were balls deep in it, why I used to just say, like, the reason I always stay in esports is you're not going to get fucking killed in esports, are you? Like, I'm not dying for fucking Counter-Strike. Difference is, you start uncovering the wrong stones in other certain areas, your car blows up when you turn the fucking engine one day.
Oh, yeah.
Or, yeah,
well, look what happened with the Panama Papers. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
You know, again,
So the problem is, like, there are those areas where that's the aspect. So I feel like people don't realize, like, the Benicio del Toro character, I think, is incredibly relatable, because essentially, if you understand the classic Marvel comic, The Punisher, that's what he is. Essentially, by the way, there's another thing, guys. If early on, when they're refusing to tell you who he is or why he's doing what, you can't tell his family were a victim of the cartel. Again, mate, just pause the film, pause this episode, and you need a massive list of all the best movies of all time about, like, criminal organizations, because that motivation is so obvious. I never had to be told that. Like, they could have even not told me that at the end and showed me everything else, and I would know exactly why he did what he did.
Nothing will make sense to your American ears. And you will doubt everything that we do. But in the end, you will understand.
Because that's one thing, though, I actually can mega fuck with, which is the idea that if you're the guy where they took everything from you, there's a reason why there's whole movies about that, of, like, can they then, forgive and become, like, religious or something and, like, let the resentment go? And, essentially the film Unforgiven's about this. Can they go and just be a different person and work on the land and, become a reformed person? Or is there a part of them which, like, the only possible thing you could do after that is hunt down those people and kill them like dogs for what they did to your family, etc. And so I actually think he's a mega, in some way, look, he's not the hero. There are no heroes in this movie, but he's the anti-hero of this film. I thought his character was brilliant in this. I knew exactly where it was going, but I was egging him on the whole way. I was loving it.
Yeah, to that point, I think, the heart definitely, it resides in the strange, almost, it is kind of semi-paternal, I think. He explicitly says that at the end. But the relationship between Benicio del Toro's character, Alejandro, and Emily Blunt, Kate, Alejandro is very paternal to Kate when she's hurt, like when she's shocked by the violence that happens in the roadside shootout. He reaches out to make sure she's okay. But what's super interesting about his character is he's explicitly coded as a psychopath, and what always happens is, like, for example, before he tortures the brother of the drug lord, before he goes in that room with Guillermo, he fucking is having a nice, polite conversation to an old colleague. Oh, how are the wife and kids? Yeah, oh, you're in Monterrey now. That's great, much better than Juarez. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, we should get lunch sometime. Yeah. He's drinking a glass of water, and then he walks in and perpetrates a torture so heinous that Denis Villeneuve cuts away, and the rhythmic grunting. Loads of people have, I believe, erroneously interpreted it as a rape scene, which I've never understood.
Oh, because he had, like, it looked at his.
Well, because he literally sticks his
because he's sticking his crotch in his face. Yeah,
which is just, for me, I just took that.
It's
to
just
be
intimidation.
No, intimidation. Yeah,
it's just intimidation.
Yeah.
And what Denis Villeneuve does quite brilliantly is, obviously, he brings in a bunch of water. He brings in one of them giant, water cooler tanks, and puts it down. And obviously, in your brain, because of what you've been programmed with the American government, you're thinking waterboarding, right? You're thinking, because waterboarding is so hilarious, because obviously the government, the US government were framing that as actually, no, it's a non-lethal form of torture. It's non-harmful.
It doesn't actually harm you. It just makes you think you're drowning.
Yeah, which is why famously Christopher Hitchens was waterboarded on television to sort of show people how horrible it is. And so you could have this moral objection because we were going through a strange time in the post 9/11 landscape where there was this, you alluded to it before in a previous episode, Duncan, where we talk about the Jack Bauer, 24 psyop of it's okay to torture people as long as you get the defuse codes.
Yes.
It's totally fine. And nothing is off the table. And so we were having a huge backslide on human rights. So anyway, he knows you know that. He knows that's in your brain. He knows as soon as he puts the water jug down, you're thinking he's going to waterboard him. And then he stands over him with his crutch in his face. And then it just cuts away and you can just hear grunting. And it's like, obviously, what Denis Villeneuve has done there is he's getting you to imagine all kinds of horrible things, but he doesn't show you any torture. But what went on in that room was fucking diabolical, mate.
No.
And
by the way, here's one thing.
Very, very powerful scene.
Even the fact it has a drain on the floor in the room.
Yeah, they show the close-up of the drain.
Why would you need a drain in a cell, mate? Because, the joke is, if it was a different director, it's like, if that was Tarantino, like a fucking tooth and some blood would go down that shot before the end of something. But,
if it was Tarantino, he would be raping him and he'd have a ball gag in his fucking mouth, mate.
And the joke is Tarantino would bizarrely cast himself as the person doing the offense. If people don't know, by the way, that is one of the best jokes of all time, which is, if you don't know, Tarantino did obviously help out Robert Rodriguez in writing From Dusk Till Dawn, right? Yeah. And people often point out, wait a minute. So Tarantino wrote a film in which, what's her name? I can't remember the name of the actress now. What's the name of
Salma Hayek?
Salma Hayek plays like a character, if you remember, who has to pour whiskey down her leg into the mouth, off her foot into the mouth of a character. Then he cast himself as that character. And it's like, I see you, Quentin. I see what you're all about.
Who's also a schizophrenic rapist as well. It's actually ridiculous.
And he's like, that's me for real.
Yeah.
And he cast himself.
Guys, we don't even need to do auditions for that. I got you. What the fuck?
Exactly. I got exactly the right guy for that. Oh, I'm sure you can handle the grab test. Yeah, don't worry, he's into it. I'll tell you.
Yeah, he's wild like that. But anyway, so back to what I was talking about. Alejandro's character, I think, is he goes from the caring and the generous and the normal and the relatable to the cold, calculating monster he is. And why is he like that? Well, obviously, as you find out, the drug lord that he ends up assassinating at the end of the film killed his wife, cut her head off, and threw his young daughter into a vat of acid while she was alive. That was how they killed her. They just threw her into a vat of acid and melted her.
Regarding which he just goes, it wasn't personal.
I love that line at the end where he's trying to convince him. I just love that because he's begging for mercy. He's saying, no, don't kill me in front of my sons, even though I've had hundreds of people killed. And also, it wasn't personal. And Alejandro just said, it was personal to me.
No fue personal. Para mí sí.
It was personal for me.
By the way, that's why I relate to that character, though, because that's exactly what happens with me in esports. Like, I admit at the beginning of all my videos, like, here's how the person fucked with me specifically, which made me start on the trail. But then at the end, they always do that. Like, Mitchell has this a million times. Half the time, some of the people when you're on the trail are sort of like, hey, maybe we can just like make a deal, or hey, like, let's have dinner or something. You just want to tell them like, oh, you don't get this still. Like, for you, it's just business. I fucking despise you, though. I'm on your trail because I hate you specifically. Like, there's no deal to be done here. But like, that guy actually just think like there's a way out at the end.
I actually might be the fucking original cartel guy in the equation. I probably say it's nothing personal to people more than they say it to me.
Always personal with me, mate, everything.
Yeah. I would just say it just isn't. I serve.
I don't even need it to be a sequel. It's always personal with me. The original movie would be personal.
But yeah. So anyway, Alejandro and Kate, they have this relationship, which is like, again, quite stark. Like at the end, when he is about to use a corrupt police officer, when they go through the tunnels and they do that late night operation, she pulls a gun on him and says, stop. And he just shoots her and says, don't you ever fucking point a weapon at me ever again.
Step away from him.
Put that down.
I mean it. Move away from him right now.
Don't ever point a weapon at me again.
And
in,
so
in her Kevlar jacket, so it just knocks the wind out of her.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean.
It is
it's
like
actually
disciplining a child, a naive child,
yes,
right?
correct.
It has that energy about it, and Benicio del Toro just nails that relationship and that energy in this part, which becomes explicit as you guys mentioned at the end when he's saying, "Oh, you remind me so much of my daughter," but it just shows her naivety, and he's like, "Why are you trying to stop Daddy on his mission right now? Like, Daddy's going to work. Pow pow, go away."
Yeah, but I mean, I think that I never know whether to take that at face value or not. I'd be interested to know what you guys think. Is that just the fact he is, a manipulator because he has to be, and actually, he of course has no feelings. The feelings ended. I mean, like I wouldn't know how you would begin to process something like that. That because of your involvement in crime, your family are murdered in this brutal way.
Right. And to be clear, he was never the good guy. The reason why his family was murdered is because he was a lawyer for the Medellin cartel. So he was always involved in this.
And that's what's also interesting, because again, it's quite subtle. They reference the transformation Alejandro has gone through, because Josh Brolin's character, who is I can't remember the name, is it Martin? Is it or something like that? Well, anyway, he says Matt
Graver.
Yeah, Matt. He says no lawyers on this mission, no lawyers on this train. He says that a few times.
Also, when they don't take the black actor
Daniel
from
Kaluuya, Daniel Kaluuya, who is Kate's partner. He says no lawyers. He says fucking lawyers when they're having a discussion about what's going on with the case. So, but of course, Alejandro used to be a lawyer, but he's a million miles from that now. I mean, it even sounds absurd when you go like, oh, he's like a former Mexican, lawyer turned fucking unstoppable assassin. But it's interesting as well. If you look at it historically, if anybody, I'm sure people do know about the Medellin cartel.
Pablo Escobar.
Even just from fucking
Pablo
Entourage, they know. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's pretty much bled over at this point. Come on.
The assassination, they were known for their assassinations, because what Pablo Escobar was such a fucking psychopath. He went to war with the Colombian state. And if you go and look at some of the people that they assassinated thousands. They used hitmen to assassinate thousands of people. They took out a fucking Colombian presidential candidate that campaigned on bringing down his cartel. They just killed him, right? Yeah, he was killed at a rally. They killed police colonels. They killed judges. Anybody that was going to try and stop their criminal enterprises. And their hitmen were fucking people were fucking terrified. People were terrified to speak out against the cartel. People were terrified to prosecute the cartel, the Medellin cartel. They were they were the ones that really fucking ramped it up between the 70s and 80s. They are obviously now, I will say, the Mexican cartels have unquestionably cleared in terms of the lengths that they're willing to go to make their points and murder their enemies. But I mean, that ramp up in violence, where it was like there were just no boundaries anymore. It all goes back to Medellin, which is why fucking Alejandro is such a terrifying character. And by the way, the bodies this motherfucker drops in the final run, it's so clean and clinical. It's like a Hitman level. He kills the police.
By the way, I don't know if you took this. Obviously, all Denis Villeneuve, the name is obviously, like you said, we're prisoners in the end. Maybe we're the prisoners watching the film. In the same way, I took it that he is the Sicario.
He is the Sicario.
He is the Sicario.
Well, that was they kept that more subtle till this reveal. Yeah, in the end, that's what the premise of the film is, right?
Yeah. Well, I think there's definitely a double, a bit of play at work, and you're not quite sure who the titular Sicario is going to be, because your assumption is, of course, well, these are the good guys, right?
Yep.
So they're going to be the victims of a Sicario. Someone's going to try and get them. And that's kind of mirrored with what happens to Kate's character when they just bring in John Bernthal for 2 scenes. Which is how good this movie is. John Bernthal just turns up for 2 scenes. Kate picks him up at a bar, takes him home, realizes that he was involved.
If you don't know who he is, he's that guy from the famous gif of
Yeah. Well, he's the
Everyone who's
Punisher.
on Twitter a million times,
Yeah,
yes.
he's the new Punisher. I love John Bernthal. He plays one of the. He's the. If you need a dirtbag in a movie, he is the ultimate dirtbag. He's great, and also in the flashbacks for The Bear, fantastic as well. Shows such great range. He's an actor that's really grown on me a lot. But anyway, he plays a dirtbag in this movie. Kate picks him up. She wants to unwind from all the stress of the violence and the near-death experiences she's had. So she wants some casual sex. So she picks this guy up in a bar, goes back. She sees that he's got these bands that they used from around the money from a previous bank raid where they were laundering the drug lord's money. And she realizes that he is tangentially associated with the cartel and therefore she might be in danger. So they have this like fight, and then obviously Alejandro and Matt turn up and they basically, you know, kind of beat him into submission. And it's in that moment where you see Matt is basically saying to him, we can just put your address on the internet and your family will be killed. And you realize right there, the parallels are the cartel will kill your family. But here we have a member of US law enforcement, specifically the CIA, basically doing the exact same thing to leverage somebody, to apply pressure, saying, you know, we'll just have your family killed. No big deal.
I'm the one who decides whether your daughter get federal protection. Or whether we post your ex-wife's address on the internet. I decide.
And it's that this is like the midpoint of the movie. And so what you realize is like, okay. The good guys are certainly not the good guys. And if they're willing to do this to someone who's one of their own, he's a police officer that's obviously working with the cartel for money. What are they willing to do when they get down to, you know, to these tunnels that they find out about? And of course, it's worse than you would even think.
By the way, I even thought one part that they weren't explicit about, well, I immediately took the inference, is when they do that initial thing where they're watching the person go into the bank and they're going to catch like the woman taking all the money out and they tell her, don't go into the bank. And then you see her on the camera this is what a stupid character this is. She doesn't understand. You think the cartels won't be able to like get someone within a bank or the police to pull up that video and see you. And then magically someone tries to kill you a few scenes later. Like that's also why in that scenario, they were doing you a favor by saying sort of like stay in the car, like we've sort of handled that essentially. Don't like implicate yourself in it because again, like this isn't like good guys and bad guys, and the bad guys are all like low-level street thugs, and we're the good guys who are all like some unimpeachable power. Like essentially, as you're going to see with the other characters, it's also the implication there's like double agent shit going on. All this is why it has to be intelligence agencies. This is their craft. Like everyone's a double agent. That's how you. By the way, if people don't understand, I've pointed this out on past episodes that were about like spy movies. The reason why that has to work is because otherwise 24/7 all you do is like Cold War mole hunts within your org. What you do is you know he's a double agent. The point is he really is playing both sides. So while they're useful to your side, you just understand they're a double agent and use them in that way. So yeah, the idea that she's so naive, she thinks she can just wander in and get herself like on camera, as it were, and this will have no consequences. It's why I actually do think if someone got all the way to the end of the film and they're shocked, it's like, bro, did you not see all the like sort of warning signs coming all the way through the film?
I love Josh Brolin's reaction to it. Like someone's just tried to kill her, right? That she brought home, right? She could have just as equally gone to his place and then maybe she is dead or whatever. And Matt just goes, oh, cheer up. This is good news. We've got him right where we want him. We can like leverage this guy. We'll put it in the report that you lured him here and it was all part of the operation and not just that you were just a fuck up trying to get laid.
You brought him back here, though. That's smart.
Yeah, love how we're gonna pretend like I planned this.
Why don't you just write that in your report? Come on. This is good news.
Don't worry, we'll write it up. This is brilliant. And then they go out and they fucking torture him. And he's just in the back of a police car, bleeding, crying. And Matt's just going, the thing about you being beat up when you get in the back of a car is no one's going to notice a few more scratches. So here we go. And then Alejandro's just leaning in through the window, like gouging his fucking eyes. And stuff. It's like, this is fucking insane.
By the way, I actually do
think
Josh Brolin kills it in this film.
Oh, he is fucking...
I love
Josh Brolin anyway.
literally, this is the
mega
other thing about these films normally try to make it seem like even the people who are a little bit higher up than the grunts are sort of begrudgingly doing it. And they're like, look, it's the price of doing business. You know, how do you think we get the bad guys in the end? Don't worry, we can't get this small bad guy we're releasing back over their side, but we're going to get the big top guy. Normally, it's that like apologetic tone or sort of like conciliatory. No, this guy is just a hog in fucking hog heaven. He is a pig in shit, loving every second of it. Like literally, he laughs at almost every scene that would be traumatic to anyone else in the fucking movie. Like this guy, if you don't understand, like this guy to me just is the United States of America. Like he might nominally be the good guy, and he might actually, in doing his job, kill and limit some criminals, but he fucking loves being the piece of shit that does all this. This is the person that's in Iraq doing all shit with people over there. This is the person that's running drugs and guns in fucking South America, having people killed who are politicians. That sort of character, if you don't know, that wouldn't be an outlier. There'd be loads of those people.
Well, what I love about the character too is that he plays up certain American stereotypes and then makes them sinister. Honestly, I think this may sound weird. I think Josh Brolin's performance has echoes of Jeff Bridges' performance as the dude from The Big Lebowski. As strange as that sounds, it's a weird comparison to make. But what I mean, and I'll explain it, is that he kind of just has this like laid back Gen X vibe to him. You know, he's like an older Gen X guy. He's got the slicked back hair. He looks a little grungy. He's salt and pepper. First scene you see him in a meeting room, he's wearing fucking flip flops and, you know, a button up shirt over a t-shirt like you would in the grunge era of the 90s. And so he has that laid back Gen X air in that, you know, nothing really seems to get to him. He doesn't really seem to care. It's a little bit nihilistic, right? You could easily see him just like listening to Nirvana and hanging out and smoking a joint. But instead, he's just applying this energy of apathy to kind of the situation and then loving as Thorin says, really enjoying it for very weird reasons. And he's so cavalier about everything too. It's like, oh, we're going to go on this op. Let's do it, boys. And we just go in. He sends Delta Force in ahead of him. He's done this 1,000 times before. It's very disturbing. It's very disturbing how mild his reaction is to everything that's going on.
That was a clean fucking op, my friend.
Except for these two assholes.
Here's the thing, you know, I like to do it where either I change the ending. I'll do my director's cut version, guys, because Thorin's final extra scene, Lee and Herring, shout out there for Richard. Right? So what I would add to this film is this, because this is the only way you could make, because it wouldn't actually add to the movie, but it would make that character complete. Here's the extra final scene you needed, Monty. It's back in the US. He's just come back off the op. They've done all the things they need to. He knows that the Benicio del Toro character went and, you know, met his own fate. Either he killed the guy who didn't, who gives a fuck. That was his reward for helping them, you know. He knows Emily Blunt signed away everything. And it's him coming back to his house. And what he does is he comes back to his house, Monty, and his house is everyday America. And his family don't really know what they do. They do works for the government somehow. And he comes in and he says something to the wife, like, oh, how's he doing? No, you wouldn't believe it. But, you know, whatever. I'll tell you what, I'll just put the kids to bed and I'll come see you. He goes in, he kisses his little daughter on the head. Oh, really, sweetheart? Oh, yeah, we'll be seeing Grammy on the weekend. And then the idea is he also can do that thing, which is it's a classic trope if people don't know from Holocaust films. You have like the SS guard go home and then he's just like a family man. Then you're like, but how can he be both at the same time? It's that juxtaposition, because that would actually be perfect, because that is who those people are.
And then,
like that
and
guy,
then he goes,
I guarantee this guy for real sleeps like a baby every night. He's never fucking up tortured. This guy just fucking loves it.
And then he's like, I need to unwind. And then he just rolls himself a joint, showing that he uses the drugs that he's allegedly at war with. There we go.
Yeah. I mean, look, for me, I mean, I don't hate the final scene of the movie with the which is the family of the corrupt Mexican police officer who gets killed by Alejandro, and they're playing soccer, and then they're the match is stopped because they can hear like distant gunfire. There's like a shootout or something, and then play just resumes and
it's just the life goes on angle, right? It's a bit like that traffic scene. Everyone knows what's going on. You just fucking keep your head down.
But crucially, I think what it shows is, remember the motivation for basically unleashing Alejandro in this way, for basically bringing Kate in. Kate is, so the whole reason Kate's there in the first place is to essentially be a patsy, because the CIA can't operate on domestic soil without another law enforcement agency in the US basically having tactical command or working in tandem with them.
Then where are we going?
Because CIA can't operate within U.S. borders without a domestic agency attached. I told you you'd be useful.
So that's it. That's why I'm here.
So they bring her in, all wide, doe-eyed naivety. They bring her in to basically be the head of the operation who's going to sign off and say we did everything by the book. But that's just the pretext to unleash Alejandro. And why do they want to do it? Well, they unleash Alejandro because he used to work for the Medellin cartel. And basically, the Medellin cartel in this universe is coming back. They want to get back to the day when the Medellin cartel controlled all of the cocaine, which Matt explicitly says, listen, darling, people aren't going to stop putting powder up their nose or shooting stuff up in their arms because the world.
They said 20% of the world of the country does this, but 20%.
Yeah. He said 20% of people are going to. 20% of people are going to be doing some illegal form of narcotic. And so until that stops, until people want to stop doing that, we have to just make the best of a bad situation. Like, he acknowledges that the war on drugs, prohibition policy, he is acknowledging in that moment it's fucked. And what he's saying is, but if we can have the Medellin cartel, which we can control a bit better than all these other cartels, that would be way better for us. So how do we do it? Well, unfortunately, we are unleashing this maniac to kill a family, essentially.
But they also have plausible deniability because this guy is he's like I said at the beginning, they kind of are just unleashing the pit bull, right? They're just putting him in the situation. They're like, we're going to clear out this drug tunnel. I don't know where he went. Weird.
Oh, wow. Jeepers, he got away from us. But like the reason this links to the end is it might be better for Americans. The Medellin cartel is back and this drug lord's been killed. But what it crucially tells you in the final scene is for the people of Mexico, nothing has changed. They still live under the yoke and the terror of these crime gangs. And whether it's Medellin, people wielding the guns or a different cartel, it doesn't matter. And so in that moment, ultimately, I think the movie, after having all of this focus on what happens on the US side of the border and how it affects Americans, I think it's very important that the final scene is that sort of somber, it fucks up the Mexican people more. And so I think that's like a little powerful twist right at the end, which, it might not, a lot of people might not pick up on that shift, but I think that's what it's explicitly saying at the end, that ultimately, whether this works for the US or not, it certainly does not help the poor people of Mexico.
By the way, on the topic of Emily Blunt's character, since she's sort of centrally forced into the film almost as the lens and the proxy for us to experience the film.
Yeah, absolutely.
I actually do think as well that, like, in a way, it's very well done. Like I say, the only reason why I could sort of like pick this apart, it's the same reason why basically I can't watch most detective shows on TV or police procedurals if they're just about the whodunit. It's because I've seen too many of them, so I already know how to sort of, by inference, guess who it won't be or who it could be or what the red herring is, or I can even just tell by the length of the episode. If you do it on like 40 minutes in, that's not the guy in this show unless you're the one, unless it's fucking Columbo. You know what I mean? Like, you can just tell all these. So in a similar fashion, I could see a lot of this coming, but I do think it works because I feel like for people who haven't seen either films like this, or they're coming from, that's why I think it's well done, the Hollywood trope, her character would of course be the central protagonist, right? And at the end, she would, like I say, there'd be some level of the corruption at which she can either like kill the person and stop the corruption, or she can get one person above and then they're like, this is going under me, that's unacceptable, I'm going to put them all up for 20 years, and then eventually they go. Whereas what instead you find basically is it's just the preconception of Hollywood films that either makes you think that is plausible. The movie's telling you the whole time in every scene that is not what this film is, that's not how the world operates, and you're never ever going to get, if you want, a traditional Hollywood satisfying ending. There is no ending. I mean, the inference even is this isn't even just one incident. This is just how crime works now in the relationship between America and these gangs. And in fact, that's how all the drugs in America come into the country. That's like an inference of the film. So to me, like, it's why, by the way, one of the best lines in the film is when the Benicio del Toro character says, "You are not a wolf, and this is the land of wolves now." Like, this is an example. She's an example of someone who should never be in an organization like that. Like, what they are hoping for is, it's not even a possible outcome.
You will not survive here. You're not a wolf. And this is the land of wolves now.
If you're there for like justice or the truth, I mean, first of all, one thing you have to learn in life, which films don't tell you, is the truth will fuck your life up worse than anything. What are you talking about? What if the truth is incredibly blackpilling? What if it's incredibly dark? What if it exposes all sorts of people and things you love in your life as completely fraudulent or nonsense? Like, would you want to live with that truth? There's certain truths I don't think some people can handle. Again, to reference the old fucking Jack Nicholson line, which, by the way, has only aged better and better, because when you watch that as a naive kid, you also just go, "Oh, that's fucked up," and then you realise, wait a minute, that speech was fire. It's just because he's in the dock. I think it's shit. Like, isn't he right? Sort of. He kind of is, if you think about it. But that's a great example, because in that film, he's supposed to be at the end, he wasn't right, because they got him and they made him admit it. We got him, guys. It's like, no, his actual implication in that film was like, this is just where the world works, dickhead. And if you can't handle it, then you're fucking, then one, you don't deserve us helping you. And then two, this is just how it goes. So I actually thought what was hilarious also is this. The way that she is on multiple levels coerced into not saying anything, to going along with it. By the way, you can see that her character is never going to learn that the stove is hot until she has horrifically burned her hand. When she gets shot by Benicio del Toro, walks out like she's in a fucking like kids movie and punches Josh Brolin's character in the face. Like, what did you think he was going to do? Go, "Hey, why are you doing that? Sorry, you got shot." Like, no, like, if anything, she gets off lightly. It's just because they needed a sign off at the end. And then when she is coerced to sign at the end with a gun to her face, guess what, love? That's the cop version of what the cartels do. You've seen it through the whole film. You don't have a choice at that point. By the way, if people don't know, this is one thing I learned years and years and years ago from people who were into like the idea of smuggling mushrooms or weed into the country. People who did that said, whenever you looked into the drug business, they used to even just go, and when they would do like via boat from South America, like you fly, you go around, what would do is they go to the person who has the small boat thing, and they just put the gun and go, "Do you want to die or do you want to do the drug thing?" There was never like a choice, like, "Hey, do you want to be involved or go?" It's like, once we've revealed ourselves, you either do it, everyone does it, by the way, or you just die instantly and no one ever knows. You just had an unmarked grave at that point. So that is just the world of what's going on here. And essentially what you learn is, look, it's not really the most subtle fucking like line of all. Oh, the other side of the coin of the criminal is the cop. It's the fucking Joker in it all over again. But that is what they're trying to show you, is that the police themselves and these intelligence agencies work somewhat the same way. They work by coercion and fear tactics. And you know what? If that doesn't work, just put a fucking bullet in your head. So are you going to do what we want you to do or not? And so actually, I think the ending's fucking epic on all levels.
Yeah.
Well, I also
really,
think
really
that the realization of the levels, like the depth of the game and the levels of the game, are the real horrifying revelation of this film, because we see it through Emily Blunt's worldview, and she's explicitly told by her superiors at the FBI, these decisions, you're going to be fine because these decisions are made very far away from us. They're made by the elected officials, hundreds of miles away, and this wouldn't be happening if it didn't have their blessing. So you don't have to worry that it's an extra legal, potentially, definitely very illegal, activity that is going on, because it's already been signed off on. And you get to see, okay, well, you think that Matt Graver, Josh Brolin's character, is the puppet master, or Alejandro is the puppet master. No, even they are enthralled to other powers that are far above them, right? And so you get to see, like, there's the Emily Blunt layer, which you would think would be quite informed because she's a fucking FBI agent, right? You think about the FBI and you think, oh, these people are legit. Turns out they are nothing compared to the CIA, Delta Force, random assassin dudes who are employed to actually deal with the real problems. And then on top of them is just the shadow overlords ordering them to do it. Right?
Yeah,
By the way, if you want a contrast point, just compare her to the classic Clarice Starling from Silence of the Lambs. Like, she's also this like naive figure. The difference is that's Hollywood movies. You can get the bad guy in that one. In this one, you have to just learn the harsh reality of the world.
I mean, I just think it's incredible that the revelation is basically that she is a pawn getting controlled by other pawns, and you never actually see who is in charge of
why
this.
would you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the only thing that I probably don't like about this movie, this sounds horrific to say it out loud, but is the fact she lives. Because I think I love a character, and I love the way Emily Blunt plays this. I think actually the wide-eyed naivety is again, it's essential because it's meant to be opening our eyes to this world that maybe you do have some sort of notions of thinking, well, it's tough being a police officer or working for the DEA, or
I mean,
out
what
stopping
I
drugs
love
for
about her
nominally
naivete,
good people.
Richard, is that the opening scene does such a good job of presenting her as somebody who shouldn't be naive. She's
No.
the one who, unlike all of us, is in the SWAT vans in gunfights, and you think, oh,
Well,
she's a tough cookie in a way, and yet
I
you
will add there's
realize
a
like
number
you
of
can get so much tougher.
yeah, there's a number of scenes though, I think, where they're explicitly showing you that she isn't she hasn't been assimilated by the kind of jaded law enforcement machine. Like, she nearly dies at the start because she gives a perpetrator like that split-second chance
Sure.
to shoot at her. She does gun him down, but then when she sees the bodies, she's outside puking. Like, that's a trope you usually assign to a rookie. Duncan will know this. On every British
Yeah.
police procedural on TV, what always I can't even remember the name of it, but what was that famous one where it was like, I think it was like Helen Mirren was always like the detective.
Oh, yes.
And she would always turn up, there would be a gruesome body, and like the guy would go, I wouldn't go in there, love, it sounds like it's a bit of a mess. And she goes in and she just looks at it and goes, all right, well, throat lacerations, 5 days of decomp, and then the man who's just like been condescending to her comes in and goes, and like, so the idea of the rookie being sick is there. So she throws up. Then in the shootout, when she has to kill a police officer that's clearly, on the side of the banditos, she screams, fuck it. She goes to pieces mentally. She's struggling with it. She has to be comforted by. So I think, like, actually what you realize is that yes, she can kick ass. She kills people. She has to for her job. But actually, it's wearing her down. It's breaking her down. It breaks her down psychologically.
Right clear!
This is going to be on the front page of every newspaper in America.
No, it won't. They won't even make the papers in El Paso.
And so at the end, I mean, the only way I would change this movie, in the same way, the only thing I would do differently about Training Day is I would have Alonzo, Denzel Washington's character win. And I would have. Yeah. Like, I think it's a much more powerful message about what's going on with the police. I think she has to die. I think Alejandro has to turn up at the end, get a signature, and then kill her or disappear her or something horrible. And I think, because she's seen it, she knows about it. These guys have to operate with impunity. These guys have to operate in secrecy.
What I love about this is you're basically just making this movie a Cormac McCarthy novel at this point in time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which, by the way, if you want to see the even darker version of this film, it's called The Counselor. It's directed by Ridley Scott and written by Cormac McCarthy.
Yeah, I mean, listen, but also I would add, just to, I would talk about No Country for Old Men.
Yep.
Understand, in No Country for Old Men, he dies. Like, this is what blows everyone's mind about the movie, that the guy that you're on the journey with dies off screen in a hail of bullets or something horrible, and you realize the protagonist is actually the Tommy Lee Jones character. It's about him seeing this new rise of crime and what it means for him, and it's an incredibly powerful perception shift. And also, his wife even gets killed, and Anton Chigurh says he's going to do it. He says, listen, the best I can do for you is I just kill you and not your wife. Deal? Yes or no? And he goes, "Now I'm gonna come find you." All right, well, fuck it. You took your best shot, you missed, and now your wife's dead. No, beautiful, sweet, wonderful Kelly McDonald is dead, and just a stain on his shoes at the end. So it's like that needed to happen in this film, I think, for it to just reach ultimate classic, like horrifying, shake you to your core status about what it's trying to say. I don't think she should be able to like walk away from the world of wolves and go back and become a traffic cop or whatever the fuck she's going to do after this. because these guys, she knows about these guys. She can turn and flip anytime she wants. As it happens, it's intimated. Alejandro says to her, I wouldn't stand on balconies for the foreseeable future, right? He fucking says that. Yeah, because you might just get sniped because the cartel know about you. So, I mean, there's every chance she could go like some form of witness protection to go. So, unfortunately, Alejandro has to give the speech to remind me of my daughter and then pop her in the head. That's how, unfortunately, the movie goes to a 9.5 if you do that.
I agree, but the problem is that's the sort of shit that never gets past the focus group, isn't it? They're like a bit of a downer ending, though. So the other end, Thorin's extra final scene is then I'll do it post credits for this one. So already I gave you the one where like the guy, the Grover guy, whatever, kisses the wife and he goes to bed or whatever. Then there's another scene, right? And it's basically like a kid. Again, it's in like a CNN newsfeed. Like, oh, we're hearing information here. The body's found another. And then basically it's like you hear a ding. And then what happens is someone leans over in a nice summer dress and pulls out some cookies out of an oven. And then what happens is she goes, will you turn that off and come for dinner? And then she's just got like the perfect white picket fence family. But then when she sees that the kid's watching like some news, she goes, turn that over immediately. I don't want you seeing stuff like that. And then they all come running into the table. And that's she's put on the mask that this never happened. And she's just trying to live a normal life now. By the way, one little thing I thought I'd weave in here is this. In the same way as I always think one thing people miss and don't understand whenever they watch any swords and sorcery, like Game of Thrones type thing, is that premise that back in the day, because people didn't have clean water sources, nobody drank water. That wasn't a thing. Yeah. The way you became hydrated was you drink milk or you drink fucking wine, famously. Beer. And the point is these things like actually were more diluted with like whatever water source you did have, like a little bit from a well or something.
It was very low alcohol beer, but the monks would drink it because it was clean.
But the point is, anyone who isn't essentially religious is like a little bit half cut during all these scenes, which gives a totally different dynamic to why they would behave that way. Well, one thing people aren't going to think about in this case, this is why Emily Blunt's character is a naive cretin, is you think within this business of transporting white powder drugs that can be cut, people aren't all using the drug along the chain. Now imagine how people who were already violent sociopathic figures involved in hard crime in exchange just for money or to not be killed on cocaine would behave. Like anyone who has taken cocaine has a sense it's incredibly speedy. People would react impulsively. There's a violent, almost inherent aspect to it where you could very easily get. So also, if you think of that aspect, that's why everything's so hyper fucking violent to me. It's like that's also like a part that's so almost like baked into the concept of this drug. And also, these people are using the drug. Why wouldn't they? So in this scenario, I think that's another part you have to realize. This is what the world of that sort of a drug is like. It's very dark. It's very brutal.
Yeah.
One last thing I had to say was this, aside from the obvious thing, which is just like I said about using cocaine. I will say, if you can watch this film and then just go, it's racist to want borders in countries, well, then you know what? I certainly hope you don't ever meet any of the people that are in this film and they don't ever come and meet your family, because in that world, you might then think twice about whether or not, you did want people to be allowed to just porously enter your country who might have a background this unverified completely. You don't even know who they are. They just walk in and they're just, they're your kids' fucking playground if you're in Texas or Arizona or California or somewhere. And then the last thing I'll say is this, because we didn't actually talk about this. Since we referenced on the last episode some of the cinematography, like the actual like shots of the environment, like that scene at the end where it's like a dusk, like nighttime setting, looks incredible, doesn't it? I think it's fabulous. Bearing in mind, people often complain about the color palette in modern films. I think they do a really interesting job with it here. Some of the scenes are super iconic.
I want to talk about this because I talked about the color palette in the last episode, and this was also cinematography by Roger Deakins. But the color palette in this film I found fascinating because it is basically tan, dark blue, and dark green only. The entire movie. And I talked about how I think that Villeneuve as a director really loves those aerial shots. I think he's one of the best directors ever at helicopter and drone shots. And you get to see...
Bro, every single new place he brings you to is always like this, wide shot, flying in. The soundtrack is up. It's all some version of that. It's all, every fucking, in all his movies though, it's like the same thing in all the films.
I love it though, because it gives you a sense of place. But I think one of my favorite shots in this one was... right before the torture scene when Benicio del Toro, he's in this tan suit, like this khaki suit with the dark blue shirt. The police uniforms are all dark blue. He like is folding up his jacket, and then they skip the torture scene and they go to this flying scene where the entire landscape is just khaki with dark green brushes. But if you notice, all of the characters, khaki with dark green, khaki with dark blue. It is basically, this whole film is just 3 colors, and it is beautiful to look at as a result. And the dark blue and dark green elements really pop on the screen because it's against the like sandy background, right? And it's the landscape, it's the costuming, it's the props in them. Like all of the chairs are dark blue. You watch him walking around, and what is he going to the torture room with? He's got his dark blue shirt. He has the dark blue jug of water. There's dark blue plastic chairs that he's walking by. It is incredibly deliberate.
Yeah, and I will add to that the scene where they're going through the tunnels and it's shot in the night vision.
In the infrared is like Dune 2.
That wasn't added in post-production. They actually got a special camera to do that.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah,
It's very well done, though,
and it looks no, but I mean, think about every other night vision scene you've seen in a movie and then compare it to this, and the difference is very apparent. That this is way crisper and clearer and feels more real and believable. And so it isn't a surprise that across everything, this got Oscar nominated, didn't it, for its cinematography, I think.
Yeah, and that whole tunnel system, you know, we also talked about how Villeneuve likes to play with darkness. He uses shadow a lot. But I've never seen really, you know, a film that's as dark, especially going into the tunnel scene where they're in the nighttime, right? It's very hard to see anything. And then they flip over and he does the POV shots with, some of it's the night vision, which is the green. And then Benicio del Toro's character is the infrared, which is the black and white. And this obviously informed what he would do later. You know, now I recognize that because, you know, I hadn't seen this film in a while. I had forgotten about the infrared camera elements of it, but that obviously informs the Guidi Prime Harkonnen sequences that are beautifully shot in infrared in Dune 2, which is, you know, probably the most spectacular part of Dune 2 are those sequences. And he clearly got, you know, the infrared filming under his belt, like Richard said, with the special camera that hadn't been used, I guess, in film before for this movie. It's from the tunnel scenes here in Sicario. So that was really cool.
Yeah,
you know
sure.
as well, by the way, this is another director who just has like 15 actors, and it's like just pick like 4 random, they're going to be in his next film. Like he just uses the same people over and over and over and over and over again because it's clearly one of those guys where once he knows what you can deliver, he just puts you in the next film. Same as Christopher Nolan, same as fucking Scorsese. Like it's that
David Lynch.
That approach. He's not trying to use loads of new people every time, but actually I do fuck with that angle because it means once you see that character or rather that actor, you kind of know like, right, well, he's worked well with him in this other film, so it's going to be interesting what he does here, etc. You know.
Yeah, I do like that. I do like his recurring, you know, kind of cast members. Although I will add, as I said, by the time we get to Dune, and I'll bring it up when we have that discussion, I actually think the ensemble cast there hurts the movie rather than helps it. And you know, I don't think you need like Jason Momoa as Duncan Idaho is
so
a fucking joke. It's a fucking joke. Dave Bautista as the Beast Raban. Maybe that's good casting, but I would have
Christopher Walken.
Yeah, Christopher Walken is a joke. I mean, and I think Josh Brolin, who's back in that, is essentially wasted as well. I think he's a fantastic actor. I love that guy. I mean, I really, really do. I forgive him all the transgressions, like that god awful remake of Old Boy that he did. I forgive you. You are absolved, like because I love you so much. But I think I didn't like him as Gurney Halleck. I didn't think it was great casting. And I am sick of Oscar Isaac's face. I'm just, why is he got to be in every single fucking film ever? Like, why? Like, like, is there a franchise that this motherfucker's like not in?
Well,
is there a movie
he's
this
just
motherfucker's not in?
He's just wasted a lot of the time. Like, I thought when he actually has room to act, like he did in Ex Machina, I think he's really good. But a lot of the time, he just shows up, does nothing, and then leaves.
Yeah, but it's like he's a really good actor, but like you can just see like this is a guy who has become like flavor of the month and just gets to be in all these fucking movies. Like, bro, you're in Spider-Man, you're in the Spider-Man cartoons, you're in fucking Star Wars as Poe Dameron. You know, you had to say somehow Palpatine returned. You had to say that. You were in X-Men. You played Apocalypse. You were the guy that did
Forgot about
learning. Yeah, oh yeah. Y'all forget the crimes this man has committed, right? He's in the Addams Family. He's in the fucking Addams Family reboot. He plays Gomez. Yeah. So I mean, listen. I liked him in Moon Knight, and obviously I liked him in Annihilation. He's also I loved him in Ex Machina. He also did that. What was it? The Card Counter. That movie is a travesty. It's by Paul Schrader, wrote Taxi Driver. It's one of the ones he's directed. It's got one of the worst, most inexplicably stupid second halves to a film I've ever seen. I'm just sick of Oscar. Please, give him a rest. Just stop casting him for a couple of years so I can get back to appreciating him. So yeah, I hate the casting in Dune. I really do. But I really love the casting in Sicario. I think it's a fantastic movie in terms of just how little it does with the cast that it has. It's very deliberate, understated. Say John Bernthal's in it for 2 scenes. Daniel Kaluuya's barely in it at all. I love Daniel Kaluuya. I think he's great. Emily Blunt is great in this, but she's great because again, it's that she's a wide-eyed optimist, but her performance is very understated. She's doing great work in this film. Josh Brolin is a wonderful, glorious maniac, and Benicio del Toro is playing one of those, it's just a classic role for him in the sense that he is just the fucking tightly wound, damaged goods, dead eyes, and what's going on behind those dead eyes upstairs. He's gone through a tragedy, and he isn't going to stop till he gets his revenge. So it's like everybody is doing really good, understated performances in this film.
It's the performances that really put this over the top because, as Thorin has stated, it really is predictable. It's a predictable film. But what makes it interesting is the themes of the film, right? And the complexities of the plot, and then the performances that make this a really good movie, because it is rather tropey. If you describe it, it doesn't sound particularly fascinating. But it's the complexities in the performance, the complexities in the themes around the drug trade, the fact that the way that it's all set up is in a very ambivalent light, and you're questioning, okay, well, these people say that they're doing these assassinations in order to, help Americans. But we also see that the ramifications of that is the Delta Force says to Emily Blunt's character, hey, you want to see some fireworks? And after they extradite that guy, it's like a fucking war zone on the other side of the border. So you're unleashing chaos on these other people to keep the chaos from yourself. Basically, right? Yeah. You're trying to contain it on the other side, but that's causing real harm.
We fight them over there, so we don't have to fight them over here.
But the power you basically just create a power vacuum over there, so they can't fight on your side anymore. They're too busy fighting each other. But it doesn't make the quality of the lives for the average person on that side any better. So you do question the ethics of the U.S. government. You question the ethics of the people involved. You question the nobility of the cause, and these themes and these explorations of it is the power of this film. And it does it very well.
Yeah,
I actually think this film would have been way worse if it had done the approach that they'd have needed to make it a happy ending, which is you'd have to have way more exposition and people looking in records and then a witness secretly telling you something. I actually think they could have made this movie so much more complicated, but it would have ruined it. I actually think the simplicity of the film is what works about it. Certain things are inferred, but then again, like I said, if you understand the language of cinema, you know what's happening in the torture scene. You know why that person didn't have to do something beyond that. You know what happens to another. You know what happens to the cop character at some point, etc. These need to play out to their logical conclusion. But I actually thought it tried not to bog you down with too many characters and too many leads, and there was no red herrings. It just follows a fairly simplistic plot. But in doing so, like I say, I actually think this movie is more about the realization that you get from the Benicio del Toro character. This is just the way things go. And by the way, I hope people get this. That's why I say he's the anti-hero. The closest you get to anything approaching justice is just him horrifically killing someone in their family. That's the best you're going to get in this film. So if that ain't good enough for you, you are Emily Blunt's character. Don't watch films like this. They're not for you.
I mean, again, I remember I talked about it with a friend, again at the time, back when the movie came out, and they were like, but why did he kill the kids? Why would he kill the kids, having lost the kid himself?
If anything, he let the guy off light. He just shoots at the end.
He didn't kill them horrific. He gave them a quick death.
Yeah, exactly.
I was expecting some sort of, like fucking
Yeah.
stuck in the middle with you.
Yeah.
A bit of that, a bit of that at the end. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly. But I mean, that like I was just like, but yeah, that's the point, dude. Like, obviously, he wants to do to that person what was done unto him. The only thing is appropriate that he's got to kill his family. Even what's coming at the start of the scene. He sits down with him and he goes,
mean, I just
every
loved,
night you kill families all over the world. And
I
yet
just love
here
how naive the drug dealer is, because he thinks that Benicio del Toro is not going to kill his children, and he's going to give him the merciful kill. He's like, please, not in front of my kids. It doesn't even enter his mind that somebody could be possibly as cruel as he is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah.
It's also why I thought it was mad, because they also do, at that moment, still give you a Hollywood trope, which is the bad guys bang to rights, it's over. So then he almost also tries to provoke him, like, oh yeah, and then your little girl. It's like, but in a movie, if he's the hero, well, then I can't kill him, can I? Oh, bloody hell, he's bringing up my daughter. It's like, you were dead the second he walked on the property, mate. Like, there's nothing you could say to get out of this. Like, but this is where you just need to know, if you still haven't figured out, this is not a Hollywood movie. Like, it's not the traditional happy end. There's no happy endings. In fact, the message of this movie is it's impossible to have a happy ending. How could you?
Yeah. When you're up against something that is so kind of impersonal and monstrous as the war on drugs. That
even reminds me, by the way, the end of this even reminds me of the part that I don't like about idiots thinking season 1 of True Detective has a happy ending. It's like, it's one of the downest endings of all time. Essentially what they do is they go, we took our whole lives and tanked all of our own happiness to get this one almost patsy level guy. We even know there was an institution, but we just can't do anything about it. So that's all you can do, really, innit? It's like, and other people are like, well, they got him though. They did get that weird guy speaking British, by the way.
And look what it took.
That one day, I know.
Yeah,
I know exactly.
It's like the happy ending to Chinatown, right?
Yeah. By the way, just while you bring up True Detective, also do want to say, like, just to give you an idea of, like, I remember people saying, like, oh, there's a couple of scenes in True Detective that are, like, over the top or whatever. And there's that bit where Matthew McConaughey has to, like, infiltrate the biker gang. And and he's talking to Woody Harrelson about, like, you know, what it was like to be undercover. And he said, one time I was working this cartel, and if they caught me, it would have been, they tie you to a chair, they they cut your face off. He said they cut your face off, then they chop your cock and balls off, stuff them in your mouth, and you choke on them. And he says,
"This is also supposed to be a real thing."
Yeah, it is. It is. And he said, so, you know, if I get caught here, a bullet to the head, it ain't that. So it's okay.
There you go.
It's just like, yes, don't ever fuck with the cartel, guys.
No.
Don't.
I was going to say that earlier as well. If anything, that's the one thing aside from that opening scene they don't show you the brutality of, which is they wouldn't just like kill you. Like, that's why I was such kind of shocked. He just, like a hitman with a fucking silencer, shoots the main bad guy at the end. Like the implication there, like I say, is they to make it extremely frightening is they don't want you to think when they kill you it's a bullet in the head and your lights go out and it's just over. They want you to think the end is the worst possible part of your life could ever be. Like, it is going to be something like they cut a hole in your throat and put your cock and balls there and pull out all your guts. Like, this is almost on the
Colombian necktie and all of these other inventions. You know, it's like, it is designed to base it, like it is this culture of fear. They utilize terror to control people, and it is that if we get you right, no, you're not just dead, right? We might give a quick death to your family, but like you're tortured, you're beyond a fucking joke. Like, well, the things we're gonna do to you, like when they find your body, even after you're dead, it's gonna be almost like ridicule. We're going to do something to you that's going to make you look ridiculous, revolting and ridiculous, like pulling your fucking tongue out through your fucking esophagus so it hangs down like a perverse tie in the form of a Colombian necktie. And some of the shit they're on now, mate, I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, I read all this true crime stuff, and it's just like, holy fucking shit. And so obviously, yeah, people are fucking terrified. There's no like sanitary kind of quick death. So in that sense, Alejandro was actually doing something relatively decent.
It's like what I said earlier as well, that like essentially the implication here is this is the only way you could even deal with these people is you'd have to actually act beyond the law. You'd have to be able to not have to have warrants and do things by the book, because like think about the scene where they torture the fucking brother of the like cartel person, and then later they're like, oh shit, what he said was true. Oh, I thought he just told us whatever we need to hear there. Like they even imply like they don't even know if anything came out of that. Like, well, we just tortured him, but you know, because they're even trying to tell you, by the way, the opposite of the Jack Bauer message of like, when you torture people, they just tell you whatever, don't they? So it might be true, might not be, but you know what? You torture him anyway. Why not? Why not? At that point, you know, it just be sort of like
which by the way, is actually true. Like all modern, all kind of like modern assessments of like the effectiveness of torture, they all arrive at the same conclusion, and that is that ultimately people will just say anything to make the torture stop. So the information you get is, you know, it's all over the place. And so, yeah, and they obviously know that. They're professional torturers. They know that. So they go, you know what, let's roll a dice. And then they go, oh, shit, he actually told us the truth. Brilliant. That was a win-win. We tortured him, and the information was real. Yay! Let's go do an off-books assassination. It's like, it's so mad.
Also, by the way,
how
when
they
you
operate.
rewatch this film, I'll give you also the other angle, because obviously some people have only watched it once to watch this episode. Here's the difference, though. When you rewatch this film, you won't feel that bad about him sort of fucking with that brother of the cartel person, or that person wanted to rape and kill Emily Blunt. You won't feel. In fact, when Benicio del Toro's character arrives, as I say, in some ways he's the only avenging angel in this movie, and when he comes, he is the one who's he's the Omar coming to fuck up the other bad guys. So just sit back and enjoy it. Crack a fucking beer, get some popcorn out. My little tip there.
But on just to start wrapping it up, I'll say as well, I do think this is a very entertaining movie, considering it's got a simplistic plot. It's got understated performances, understated but excellent, I will add. And a message that, while non-conventional from a Hollywood viewpoint, anyone who gets to 30 years old realizes this is just the wicked way of the world and how it works. And so, for when all of that is true, for it to be this entertaining is actually quite surprising. But this is a very entertaining movie. This is the kind of movie you can definitely watch with friends. It's a movie you can definitely watch with your partner. Like Duncan says, you can definitely crack a beer and put this movie on, because the opening scene is so fantastic, and by 32 minutes in, you're in another unbelievable high stakes, high tension set piece. It moves along at such a good pace for its 2-hour runtime that actually you are really drawn in. It's very entertaining and very well paced, very quick, and very enjoyable to watch right up until its final scene. So I actually think this movie is, again, it's just proof of how masterful Denis Villeneuve is, that he can take these concepts that shouldn't make for compelling movies, shouldn't be entertaining, should be like some downbeat art house indie film, you know, meta commentary about the nature of the American war on drugs. Yawn. Fuck that. Give me Avengers Endgame. Thank you very much. It should be like that, but it isn't. And audiences didn't think it was, because again, Denis Villeneuve made a ton of money on this one. This was a $30 million film that made $85 million at the box office, which is not an amazing amount of money, but once he's done it again.
By the way, have you noticed again, how the fuck is this guy making these films look like this on these budgets? Because every time I watch them, I think this just looks like a $300 million film. Like, the quality of the fucking shot and the lighting, and it's insane. That budget's mental to be doing a modern day film with.
Yeah, I mean, 30 million for this movie is wild. When you
especially
think about
because
the cast alone.
The cast, but it's also just the complexity of some of these shots, all the helicopter shots. I mean, the
shots.
The entourage shot of the cars, of like the armada of cars going in and out of Mexico, is fucking incredible. The shots that they got, and how much it would have cost to set up this entire train of vehicles.
The bomb explosion as well were actually legit. That is one of the most realistic depictions of a bomb going off I've ever seen. Like that is it. That's what happens. And so, I mean, for 30 million, it's crazy. how much quality Denis Villeneuve is able to get up there on the screen. And if you think about, like, for example, Zack Snyder did.
Dude, I had to watch Rebel Moon and Rebel Moon Part 2, Richard.
Watching that.
Yeah, have you been watching them? I've been watching them for Nerd Legion with Doa. Dude, Rebel Moon Part 2 is such unbelievable trash, and it costs like $100 million.
I'm so glad. You see, watching your reaction to it stops me having to watch those movies, because I knew I knew it was gonna be dreadful. But anyway, like, so for example, in Army of the Dead, right? Zack Snyder obviously rose to prominence by being a visionary director. You think about his directorial debut, which was a remake of Dawn of the Dead.
300 was good.
300. You think about Watchmen. You know, I'll even say visually, while I hate the movie, I think Man of Steel, I think it looked good. And yet by the time he gets to that Army of the Dead one, he actually filmed with a camera that had a dead pixel. And in the scenes, you can see the dead pixel in the screen. Jesus. Famously, Red Letter Media did an analysis of it. So it's like, imagine being such a hack fraud, right? Like, you don't even notice a dead pixel on a camera that you keep using because you like it. And then compare that to the craftsmanship of Denis Villeneuve. And just again, for context, that Army of the Dead piece of shit that was on Netflix was reputed to have a budget of as high as $90 million. So trust me, I've always said this, like, people can complain about budget and not being able to make good-looking movies on a budget. Denis Villeneuve is the proof that you're just full of shit. If you're good enough and care enough and have the craft, you can do it. You can do it with barely any money at all. And he consistently proves that, which is why he's going to be one of Hollywood's go-to directors. I just hope it doesn't end that instead Denis Villeneuve is making more movies like Dune and less movies like Sicario.
I'll be sad if he becomes the new James Cameron. I'll put it that way.
Well, you know, it just depends which way this Dune success breaks, because he's obviously made a lot of money for a lot of people on that franchise, and obviously there's another one coming with Dune Messiah. And so, I don't know. For me, I just hope I hope the success doesn't go to his head, because movies like Sicario are so refreshing compared to the trash that just gets served up on a regular basis.
I've got two things at the end here. One is, sadly, because on the last episode we talked about Prisoners that came out in 2013, I already know I can't ever get to know what Roger Ebert would think about this, because he was dead already, wasn't he? So that one's a bust. Our old enemy can't appear. Although, you know, in the future, did they review it on his site again? Come on,
they did, and
did they like it?
Actually, 3 out of 4.
All right.
Okay.
So, you know, I'll take that.
Fair enough.
It says here, they there is some silly parts. Like, it says, the criticism is, it says part of the problem is that the script doesn't really develop a protagonist. Kate is too often an observer, an unwilling and uninformed traveler on this journey. I would argue that's the point. Yeah. Brolin's Matt and Del Toro's Alejandro are so clearly in charge of what's happening that they're thinking of moves several machinations away, while Kate is unclear of not only what role she's supposed to play, but what role everyone else is.
That's
as well.
The point.
Yes, I get that this sense of confusion is part of the point, but Sicario at its core is about a world in which the lack of leadership on either side of the drug war has created complete chaos. And so it makes sense that it would feature a protagonist that is confused by the lack of ground rules. However, this makes for a film that doesn't have the emotional punch of the best thrillers, at least not until the final act, when the tables are turned. So I do disagree with that assessment, in the sense that I actually think... Yeah, I think it actually works better that the protagonist is literally having forces operating on them that they can't control, can't even see until it's too late, until the blackness has ultimately consumed them, you know? And that is a key component of a lot of movies, I think. I think a lot of movies have protagonists.
As you said, Chinatown, classic example.
Yeah, you know? And again, like this, that enveloping, blackness, that dark consuming forces that are around you that you can't see until, it has consumed me. Like I think some of my favorite movies are that journey, and I think that's clearly what happens to Emily Blunt's character in this. So I disagree. But I mean, look, we've established now that if you want terrible movie reviews, you just even Roger Ebert, like he was like, as he died, he gathered them all round and said, "You must never give a good take on a film ever again. It's what I would want. See you later, bros." Yeah.
I can't lie though, he did actually somehow bequeath his legacy to the right people though. They seem like they've got the flavour of his bullshit somehow. And anyway, the last thing I was going to say was this.
Yeah.
I hope now you're all thinking, but I've seen Dune. I say Dune, Monty, not Dune, but okay. You can be American all day long, mate. Enjoy your data. So I say Dune. I say Puma as well. I also don't call it Puma, do I? So don't worry about that either. Right? Basically, you're going to think, but wait a minute, Thorin, you've always very much, in fact, you even say it's your favourite novel series, the Dune series, right? And it seems like you like every single Denis Villeneuve movie. So here's the cliffhanger. Dun, dun, dun. How is it that I don't like Dune? How is that? Well, tune in and you'll find out. Because actually, sad thing is, this is why I said on the past one, I thought, for real, I didn't have insane expectations because I know it's a hard novel to film, but I thought if anyone could do it, this is like the dream casting, isn't it, for the director? Like, he obviously only picks projects he cares about. He has his own artistic vision. Maybe he'll do something unique with the plot. You know, in fact, again, notice his movies aren't burdened with exposition and unnecessary dialogue. I even thought maybe this is the guy who can nail it. And so actually one of the saddest things to me was that I didn't particularly enjoy it and that didn't really work for me because to me, it's almost a shot. I've liked almost every, I didn't think this guy had ever missed till he made Dune. And then it's like, that's why my review of Dune 2, to all the people desperately asking, was it's better than the first one, but it's still not that good. Which is like, if I have to say that, guys, you know, I'm fucking letting you down easy.
And I think, it's interesting, guys, because I think, I saw it once. I'll watch Dune 2 before we record the next episode because it's out now and I can watch it without going to a theater. But I think, and probably a lot of other people feel this way, is that everything that was good about the Villeneuve Dune movies was done better in all three of these movies. And so now if you actually look at what bangers Arrival, Sicario, and Prisoners are, you're like, Dune's is kind of all right, I guess. It just doesn't hold up as well as the rest of his films, I think.
And I think again, like I'd love to. I'm gonna do some reading on what Denis Villeneuve says. I guess he can't really be honest at this moment in time. But I know what he said about Blade Runner, and he said that's the movie he's most concerned about because he's like, I wasn't adapting my material. It was an already established universe, and that for me is the movie I always have reservations about. And I thought when I first heard a sequel to Blade Runner was coming, you can imagine my reaction. I was
Obviously,
like, oh, for fuck's sake, like why? Like didn't need it, but actually, as far as I'm concerned, it's canon. I even forgive Jared Leto. I'll even tolerate Leto, in this film. Even though, again, when he was doing all the press junkets, he was like, "Yes," and I would spend days at a time with my eyes closed. So it's like you're only blind on screen for 15 minutes. Fuck off. Like, whatever. Try to go method.
Why
on
is
me,
he so weird?
I know he's just fucked up, isn't he? But whatever. So anyway, but like unfortunately for me, the Doom movies, they are some of the biggest disappointments I've ever had as kind of a film fan because I like the books, obviously love the material, and I just think Villeneuve. I think visually they're stunning, but the heart of the books never came across, and I would even argue that Lynch's version gets the heart of the books better, but it's just a fucking mess. It's just a mess.
There are things to like. I was telling you guys before we recorded this that I just watched the David Lynch version yesterday again, and it does have some positive qualities to it. It's weird, but it's David Lynch. It has some big misses, but it nails some things.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm probably going to be very much aligned with Duncan on this one. I might even have a quick skim read of the book before we record because obviously it's been a long time since I've read the book, but there are some crucial differences that we'll need to get into. And I think it's important because when a director makes differences to an adaptation of a book, I'm thinking Peter Jackson, Lord of the Rings, where, for example, they combined characters and things like this, it generally has to make sense. And I think Peter Jackson's changes made a lot of sense within the movie. Nobody would consider that a bad adaptation. The Lord of the Rings are modern classics, actually. The Dune movies, not so much.
Well, there you go. Preview for next week, guys. We'll be back with Dune to wrap up our Villeneuve arc.